The pages are written in blood, like real human blood.
Is this book real? Does it actually exist?
Since 1927, the Book of the Dead has instilled both wonder and fear. Written in blood and bound in human skin, this ghoulish grimoire is said to contain the secrets of the unknown universe. Could it be real, or is it just another fictional creation from one of history's most famous authors of cosmic horror? Chicago, Illinois, February 1924. Volume 14 of the Weird Tales publication mentions a cursed book that, unbeknownst to its author, will eventually become synonymous with secret knowledge and forbidden truths.
The first mention by name of the Necronomicon was in the story The Hound in 1924. But the author of the Necronomicon, the Mad Arab, was first mentioned a year earlier in the story The Nameless City.
To quote a passage from the Necronomicon, "That is not dead which can eternal lie." Doesn't that just send a chill down your spine?
That is not dead which can eternal lie.
What a creepy little snippet. The pages are written in blood, like real human blood. I think the Necronomicon is probably one of my favorite Lovecraft inventions. Written in blood, and some say even bound in human flesh. All the secrets that humanity should avoid at all costs are in this book. Pure insanity recorded within a massive forbidden text.
This fictional book has since appeared in so many horror-themed stories and films. And why wouldn't it? This grimoire is the perfect addition to any supernatural story.
My all-time favorite franchise featuring the Necronomicon is the Evil Dead movies. To be honest, the first group of those films, but especially Army of Darkness, is the first thing that comes to mind when I hear the Book of the Dead. Sorry, Lovecraft, can't help it. Klaatu, Verata, necktie. If you know, you know.
While it may be true that in modern times, Ash Williams and the Evil Dead franchise may be the most popular evolution of the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, this dreaded book has made quite a few appearances in literature and film. Authors August Derleth and Clark Ashton Smith have all used the Necronomicon in their writings, and a slew of movies, including Friday the 13th and even Hocus Pocus, all use the Necronomicon in their stories. Today, the Necronomicon has infiltrated our society so much there are many who believe it is actually a real book.
Probably around 70% of people today think the Necronomicon is a real book. And I guess it actually is, since you can buy yourself a genuine Book of the Dead online. The blood and skin binding is extra.
Lovecraft was, on many levels, an incredibly smart man. He states the Necronomicon is a huge book, containing all the dark secrets of the universe. But he never gives a whole lot of details.
Whenever this book is referenced or mentioned, it's mainly only relating to the story being told. Sure, things are hinted at, but Lovecraft cleverly left the bulk of it to the imagination.
The book contains knowledge that would drive a human insane, incantations, the true nature of the universe, how humanity is the equivalent of a bug scurrying around in our meaningless lives. And some people believe this is a real book. They believe Lovecraft didn't invent the book at all, that he had come across a real version of this text and used it in his stories.
Could it be that the true Necronomicon does, in fact, exist in reality? Or was Lovecraft's grimoire based on a real ancient text that a select few wish to keep hidden? If so, why would Lovecraft claim the book a complete fiction that he dreamed up? Perhaps answers can be found within what is known about the book and its history. Damascus, sometime during the 7th century, Abdul al-Hazred, often referred to as the Mad Arab, is killed by a mysterious invisible force in front of a crowd of witnesses, but not before writing what he originally titled the Al-Azif, which would later become known as the Necronomicon. Abdul al-Hazred originally hailed from Yemen, but was said to be a visitor of many strange and forbidden places, and discovered the secrets of Arabia's empty quarter, all while worshiping and being guided by the forgotten gods.
He was said to have been granted the knowledge of the original gods as much as his human brain could take in.
What's curious is that unless related to his religious pursuit, there's really not a whole lot said about Abdul al-Hazred. But what is said about him is the reason he is called the Mad Arab. But this is by design. Lovecraft wanted this man to be not necessarily known as an evil person, rather just someone who was gone insane. The character works perfectly, especially in the era Lovecraft dreamed it all up. He was a very racist person, but at that time, that was the norm. People feared those different than them. Some still do.
Lovecraft was a racist person. But most Americans from that time were. They were racist. It was disgusting, but normal to believe that anyone who was not white was inferior. Many even believed that non-white folks didn't even have a soul.
The societal problems of yesteryear run far deeper than many would like people to believe. But perhaps more sinister was the common belief that any white person who thought the idea of race discrimination was wrong were also shunned. These were the times Lovecraft lived in, and he wrote his stories accordingly. Mixing people's fear of race with elements of horror seemed a logical process. The city of Constantinople, Greece, 950. For many years, the Azif had been gaining readership amongst many dark scholars and mystics. One such man, Theodorus Philetus, finally translated the book to Greek and gave it its infamous name. This book was finally officially labeled a tool of evil and was suppressed and ordered destroyed by Patriarch Michael in 1050. Many new editions and translations came to be. Even the famous magician John Dee translated the book into English. Like many versions, Dee's version was not a completely accurate translation, and only fragments of it survived. It's said that the very act of studying the Necronomicon ends badly for its readers. The more accurate the translation, the more dangerous it is.
It's said that many translations of the Necronomicon have existed. All of them are powerful, but the closer to the original text they are, the more dangerous. Even reading this book is said to cause madness. The original, as if, had vanished by the time the Greek version was banned, and the Greek version itself was thought destroyed during the Salem witch trials. Evil, death, and madness followed the Necronomicon everywhere. The secrets of everything, for a price.
This is a big book. We're talking over 750 pages of darkness. But most people only find sections scattered here and there, pieces and incorrect translations. And those pieces are enough to drive people crazy. Nobody gets a good ending when it comes to the Azif.
The descriptions of the Necronomicon are pretty varied. Bound in leather, bound in skin, metal or gold class, ink versions, blood versions, even versions that are disguised as different books.
In America, during Lovecraft's lifetime, Islam was considered a mysterious cult-like religion, followed by a handful of poor, colored folk who were often insane.
Even Abdul himself should be considered as a dark parody of Islam and the Prophet Muhammad. So to write these fringe groups of darker-skinned peoples were the worshippers of evil or indifferent gods or even aliens made perfect sense.
People of the time feared difference culturally and physically. Racism was an issue most people didn't know was an issue. Blending the fear of race with the horror of the unknown was a neutral fit for Lovecraft and his readers. Americans feared different cultures, and essentially, Lovecraft's entire mythos is about being so vastly different that they are terrifying. Literal evil aliens that consider us insignificant. And this was the building block of Necronomicon, an evil book about different beings.
The Necronomicon, throughout its history, has continued to pop up and seemingly always finds those who study its arcane knowledge an ending that is always terrible. A vague account of the original Arabic version, surfacing in San Francisco in modern times, seems to be the only hinted instance of the original intact version even still existing. Miskatonic University, Arkham, Massachusetts, 1939. Dr. Henry Armitage burns to death, attempting to save the university's rare book collection from fire. Having read from the university copy of the Necronomicon, he felt compelled to save the book.
Armitage makes his first appearance in a Cthulhu mythos, or Cthulhu, in the Dunwich Horror. There are conflicting reports of his death. Other notables from the university community are Herbert West, who conducted many questionable experiments. West is portrayed brilliantly in modern times by actor Jeffrey Combs, who is a great gateway character to Lovecraft lore. Again, many believe that the low-key sinister Miskatonic U is real, and it is not. Just another piece of the Necronomicon's history. It's made-up history. The evilish parody of snobby, tight-knit educational institutions such as Harvard works the same way as Lovecraft's Spear of Race. Miskatonic is just another way to make this fictional legacy harder to distinguish from real life. And it works. People all over the world believe Miskatonic is real.
Alharzad worshipped these Lovecraftian entities and created his book detailing them and their power. But that wasn't enough to make it real. He needed the history of Abdul himself and a history of the book in its various forms. His stories needed more than surface level appeal. They needed substance. But not enough substance to erase the fear he was trying to instill. Over time, you get authors using the Necronomicon in their stories. You get articles being written about this book. You get sightings and possible owners of various copies of this book. No wonder it is so hard to tell that the Necronomicon, in fact, isn't real. Everything you can find points to this being a real book.
People are convinced this is a real book and that the old ones could be real. People believe Lovecraft was given his information from the old ones themselves. They believe that Lovecraft was guided by them, and that comes down to the written history, both the known and unknown stories.
The more you find when it comes to the Necronomicon and the old ones, the more real things seem. It makes more and more sense to believe this stuff is all real, and not just a collection of fiction. This is why Lovecraft and his brand of horror have survived the test of times, artists have been building and building on Lovecraft's work, directly or indirectly, creating and adding more and more history while still being vague. It's always a winning formula.
A lot of horror fiction today is based on Lovecraft's work, in some form. He's got his own brand of horror, his own genre. Cosmic horror, unknown horror, forbidden knowledge, and insanity all gravitate in some way to Lovecraft's work. Even the names of these creatures are foreign, exotic, and scary. Try saying Yog-Thoth, or Chulu, or even Azathoth a few times. It numbs the tongue and adds to the overall effect. Fear of the unknown, a full but also hole-filled history and weird names all around. This is why we still talk about Lovecraft. His stories seep into our subconscious mind, the elements of horror unrelenting, and stick with you. Lovecraft knew how to keep a story going, and the stories and inspired artists continue to manifest to this day.
While the history of the Necronomicon and its numerous key and background players may be fictional, the depth and lack of detail all make the book seem like a real, evolving artifact, and this is by design. December 1973, the horror film The Exorcist makes its chilly debut and will quickly earn its reputation of being one of the scariest movies in history.
Now, the original Exorcist movie is terrifying to watch, but imagine what it was like the people back then in the 70s. Movies like this didn't even exist back then. You had a lot of westerns, spaghetti westerns, a lot of stylized drama and action, but nothing like The Exorcist, nothing even close. People were passing out in the theaters. It was complete insanity.
Within an 8-year span, The Exorcist, The Omen, and Rosemary's Baby were unleashed onto the world, helping to create the Satanic Panic. Although no one thing is considered a catalyst, those films, along with a surge in new religions due to changing immigration policies, are widely considered deciding factors contributing to this ungodly situation.
Often, a copy of the Necronomicon was said to be owned by the person accused of worshipping Satan. It was portrayed as a real-life satanic book of evil used by devil worshippers. If anyone at the time tried to point out that it wasn't even a real book, they were quickly removed from the courtroom. Nobody wanted to hear that the book was a fiction. Nobody cared. They needed an object to make people appear guilty of Satanism. The Necronomicon fit the bill perfectly. A dark book detailing demons, gods, and the great old ones, with names like Azathoth and Cthulhu. It was a perfect scapegoat. I mean, come on. Even the name, the Necronomicon, worked perfectly for what they were trying to do.
In the heyday of the Satanic Panic, nothing of a darker nature was left untouched. Movies, music, and even literature were the targets of a nation's fear. However, the same fear that fueled this panic had very unintended side effects, which included the desire for anything occult-related by a growing number of people. This unintentional interest in such things also extended to the Necronomicon. North Lovell, Maine, June 19, 1999. While taking a walk, renowned author Stephen King is hit from behind by a fast-moving minivan. This unfortunate incident completely changed his life.
The accident involving Stephen King was a pretty public affair. He literally nearly died. It was a miracle of sorts that he survived and healed as much as he has. This was a life-changing event. What's often not mentioned is that some say that Stephen King was studying fragments of the real Necronomicon. Research for his books. We all know that with the Necronomicon, nothing good ever comes from studying it. even though they say that the real Necronomicon isn't real. Some say that there are Necronomicon fakes that have been endowed with evil energy. These fake books can be as dangerous as the real thing.
Whether or not you believe there's a real Necronomicon or two out there somewhere, we do know there are many people claiming to have one. We also know there are many hoax Necronomicons in the world.
So imagine someone is trying to make a counterfeit Necronomicon. They're probably trying to make it look realistic. They'll age the pages, make the book look old, and they could also fill the content of the fake book with some real stuff that they got from somewhere else. So that fake Necronomicon could end up being a real supernatural threat. It's a mishmash of real content and fake content.
Real or fake doesn't matter all that much if what's written inside is dangerous. Real occult literature is dangerous no matter where it is.
The real danger of the Necronomicon, or any book like that, is the person reading it, not so much with the book itself. If they believe it and do what it says, it will be dangerous. If the book says to sacrifice someone and they do it, it doesn't matter what book it is.
I agree that the Necronomicon, the name itself, inspires a sense of dread and also awe. The name itself is sinister. Just say it loud and then see how you feel. It's perfect.
Lovecraft created something special. There's no doubt about that. He created a fictional object that not only seems real, but could be considered culturally important. A fictional object that even today still fills the outer voids of the horror market. It was a brilliant addition to the mythos.
There's no doubt about H.P. Lovecraft's mark on the world. His brand of horror still saturates the market today. But his creation, the Necronomicon, continues to feed the imaginations of both genre lovers and creators alike. His creation, no doubt, will continue to horrify and inspire for many years to come. The Necronomicon will continue in one form or another, as will the name Lovecraft and the outworldly horrors his name stands for.